and welcome to this edition of EMS Now Up Close. I am Eric Miskell with EMS Now, and today it's my pleasure to speak with Anthony Montalbano. He's the CEO of Cyient DLM. Anthony, I've been looking forward to talking to you since we connected a few months ago, it seems like. I knew of you by reputation only in the industry, mostly from your stint at Flex years ago. So
Right.
I was glad to connect, and I was excited to hear of what you're doing now. So thank you for agreeing to take time and explaining it to us.
No, it's a pleasure to be here, Eric. I've been, following EMS now for really decades, even when I first got into the industry. So it's a pleasure to be here and part of this feature.
Good. Well, let's just jump in. Why don't we begin, before we get into the company, get into you. Begin by kind of introducing yourself and your background in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent about 10 to 11 years in the EMS industry. And Flextronics acquired a company I was at. So I was a little bit more on the telecom, air to ground side of things, but then really, spent a good amount of time in EMS. Moved to China in 2005. This is when basically everything was going to China then, low volume, high volume, everything. So me and my family moved there and had a 3-year-old at the time and moved to Shanghai and, helped lead a lot of the large transactions that were going to China then. Mm-hmm. And it was an exciting time for the industry, for Flextronics. And, that was that was really an interesting milestone for the industry, especially when you look at it where we are now. I then spent a couple more years in the industry. I actually then chose to do a change. After 11 years in EMS, I said, let's do something different. So I spent actually the last 12 years in engineering services with companies like HCL and Wipro, which are large industry leaders doing pure software product development. And so after a dozen years, when I was reached out about leading the opportunity with Cyient on the EMS side, it was a little bit of a surprise, as I was honestly not planning to come back into this industry. But of course, once I learned of what was happening with Cyient DLM, the area of their focus, and then also just really what's happening in India overall, it's really quite exciting. It's an exciting time for our company. And then also just what's happening in the industry. It feels like the early 2000s, except now we have really, India's really got a much more compelling global offering, where before I think it was much more of a regional offering.
Yeah. That was excellent. Thank you. So let's get into the company. Let's get into Cyient and maybe give us an overview of Cyient. There's Cyient DLM, and that's a part of the Cyient Corporation too. So maybe explain all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cyient is the parent company, and Cyient made an acquisition about 7-8 years back of a manufacturing, low volume, high mix manufacturing company called Rangsons, which had 3 operations in India. And this aligned with Cyient's client base, which is focused on a lot of mission critical, safety critical type services to the clients. So the main industries are aero and defense, medical and industrial, low volume, high mix. This is the core of the business. This is what Cyient focuses on from a design perspective, and the thought was that the manufacturing piece would complement that and really provide true end-to-end to the clients. And so, as time has progressed, the business aspects of a manufacturing business and engineering services business are a bit different. And so the manufacturing business is growing at a very high rate, and it also has different financial returns and investors, so compared to engineering services. So we felt it was the right time, especially with the growth that we've experienced and what we have ahead of us, to have it be 2 separate companies. And Cyient DLM just completed its initial public offering last month on July 10th, which is a very significant milestone. So we are now publicly traded. And we're we're $150 million EMS provider, really on a path to $500 million, $1 billion plus. So we're very focused on the mission critical, safety critical aspect of the business. And Cyient Limited, or Cyient Services, continues on its trajectory as well. They've actually had an amazing year if you follow the company as far as the growth, the value they're bringing to their clients. So that that part of the business continues quite strongly as well. And it also gives us a really unique advantage where we, from a manufacturing perspective, truly do have design capability. We have 7,000 design engineers we can tap into as part of Cyient. And so whether you're a $100 million company or a $10 billion company, that level of true design capability really is unprecedented, and it's something that's really helping us drive our growth with some of our key clients.
Yeah. And we should probably say, for the audience's benefit, that the DLM stands for design-led manufacturing.
That is correct. That is correct. And we looked at, does that apply based on this chapter we're in now and going forward? And it absolutely does. It is the essence of our business, and it is really where we provide value. And again, I think if you have the opportunity to walk through our operations, there's a lot of big providers in the industry, right? A company of our size in manufacturing is really pretty tiny. And but what's really unique, though, is when you kind of go through our operations and the electronics that are being produced are really, mission critical, safety critical. They're going into aircraft, they're going into medical applications, and so it's a very different quality and business and service model, which helps us really focus on the high value part of the industry.
Absolutely. So explain a little more about the Cyient DLM, kind of the footprint. It's all manufacturing facilities, as you said, in India, domestic, foreign markets served. How does it break down?
Yeah. So from a manufacturing perspective, we have 3 operations all in India. So they are in Mysore, Hyderabad, and then also a small machining operation in Bangalore. Now, what's unique is that our client base are actually very much like industry leaders, very large multi-billion-dollar MNCs. And a lot of this, when you look at some of the logos we have, that this is primarily due to the engagements we've had through the history with Cyient as well. So Cyient would do engineering work with these companies. And so this really has given these very large multinationals some comfort, and from a manufacturing perspective, instead of being a regional, maybe unknown provider, we have the wherewithal of probably about $1 billion entity. And most of our clients are also Western based. If you look at the number of our clients, they're primarily in US and Europe. And so where we see the business today, even though our footprint is in India, our clients are more Western based. We do support India as well, which is on its own a pretty exciting market. But we very much see us expanding to be more of an overall global provider. We will, India will be our core. We have a lot of capacity, and we'll continue to grow that market and those facilities. But we also see very much global as part of our outlook, as areas like Mexico, US, Eastern Europe, other parts of Asia are all really areas of growth where our clients would love to have an offering from us. And so that's part of our inorganic part of the strategy.
Okay. Excuse me. So if I think about what differentiates Cyient, then it really is those design capabilities.
It's two things. So the design piece truly is one of the biggest differentiators. I think the low volume, high mix focus in mission critical, safety critical is really one of the most difficult ones to replicate, right? So there are, very large, solid companies in the industry that service these segments, but do they really service it as a low volume, high mix way of running the business, right? A lot of times this business is in an MPI center. It's, with a little bit more of a start stop project mentality where, for us, this is pretty much how we, run the business. And so that offering is unique. And, then also when you compare us to the other Indian EMS providers, which there's now more and more coming up, and, our leadership team is a very global team, right? So, and has a lot of global EMS industry experience. So, we have, my COO is based in Silicon Valley. Our head of sales is based, on the East Coast in Boston. So, and then the rest of the leadership is based in India. So when you look at that aspect of it, it's kind of like doing business with really more of a multinational instead of a more of a regional player. And I think that's important, especially when you look at our clients. So when I reference that, we have these, large companies as our clients, it's not that we have a couple of these and the most of our business is smaller clients and tactical. Actually, the majority of our business is with these large clients. We actually do very little business with small regional clients. So that is quite unique for us as well.
Okay. So when you think about kind of what attracted you to the company, as you said, you weren't planning to come back into the industry. What was it that was so compelling about the offering and what you saw that decided it's time to jump back in?
Well, it's really just how things have progressed so much, right? So, back when, a couple decades ago when I was, well, not a couple, maybe 1.5 decades ago, but when I was, even in China, we had a big operation in India at the time, but, up until not too long ago, when you were in India for manufacturing, the business case was to support India for India. There wasn't really much of a export story that penned out financially, and so that's fundamentally changed now, right? And this is not just because of COVID and de-risking and the supply chain aspects. I mean, those are all huge aspects that are talked about, but also India has done a lot on bringing down the amount of red tape. The infrastructure has improved. The labor rates the labor rates are very competitive. The manufacturing labor in India is about 1/3 of what it is in China, and it's kind of changed where fundamentally it's not a matter of if someone wants to make something globally, now it's you look at China, you look at India. India is just now simply one of the top contenders, regardless of where the end product is. So that is pretty exciting, and then also the numbers kind of back it, right? When you look at the EMS industry, India has 3 times the growth year on year when you look at the rest of the overall industry. So that that's very much happening because of these reasons. So this the growth potential, the offerings, I think it's quite exciting. And also personally, I've been on the engineering side, in that part of the world for some time. So it's kind of nice to kind of see it come full circle and really this next chapter for EMS.
Yeah. It's interesting. I tell people when we talk about India that I remember doing my first market research study on EMS in India 20 years ago. And for the next 10, 15 years, you probably could have opened that report and it all would have applied the same, right? Everything.
Yep.
But it's really these last few years have gotten, and I want to get to that in a bit, but it's become really exciting in India, where it's really kind of achieving its potential that everyone recognized way back then. So
right. I think also another important thing, at least as far as Cyient DLM, and and what kind of attracted me is not just the India part, but also really the focus on the sectors that Cyient's in, right? We're not making consumer products. We're really in three segments. Air and defense, we count that as one segment, but basically air and defense, medical, and industrial, right? And so those are really the high value areas within EMS. The companies that specialize in those and have built the capabilities and processes and have the certifications, those companies do generate the most value for their clients. Those companies are usually the most valued in the EMS. They generate the highest margins, and usually the larger companies kind of struggled with that business a bit. They liked the profitability aspects of it, but it didn't move the needle for them financially, right? So if you're a $20 billion company, you like some of the financial returns, but they're not going to get as excited about a $10 million opportunity. They might just view that as, okay, that's maybe something for an MPI center. So for us, this is our core business, and there's this tremendous runway for us in that regard.
So you alluded to this, but I did want to follow up on it, because what also impresses me is that your team includes, as you mentioned, several executives with extensive EMS experience, right? So it seems to me that you're building something there at Cyient, and to become, as you've indicated already, much more robust industry player. So what's your vision then as you're moving forward? How do you see, what is it that you're striving to build?
Yeah, so I think right now it's really, you go through these major milestones of progression with the business and the offerings you can give. So we've actually focused on doing less. So when I say that, a couple examples are, we had automotive and communication as some sectors that were technically a focus sector, and some calls were made to just actually, let's, those are probably diluted to our business today. And you need the focus to go in and build that. So as we looked at building our business, we said, let's build it within our core. And really, until we're well over $1 billion, it's not like, we're running out of opportunities, right? So yeah, I can see once you start to become a much larger global player, you might say, okay, maybe I need some automotive. Maybe automotive starts to look really interesting. Yes, it's lower margin, but it brings another element, and same thing with communication and other sectors. So for us, our focus is to continue really just to hit these major milestones in growth with our clients. We focus on a very small number of clients. And we will be announcing some new clients as well, but the types of clients that we will announce and engage with are, again, very large multinational clients, right? So for us, success is really very few of these new clients, because again, these are the ones that have very large spends and fall into the area where our services are. So for us, it's continuing that growth, and then also continuing it globally. And then we'll also look at adjacent services as well, right? There are other aspects to the business. There, we do have some mechanical capability. There might be some other vertical integration we look at. We've looked at some opportunities on semiconductor, on services. So there's a lot there that continues to service these clients. But again, right now, just our straight EMS core business and these segments we're in, for the size we are, there's really just a lot of runway in front of us.
Okay. And then, of course, and you alluded to the IPO that was just done in July must have an impact there. So how does that prepare you for the future?
Yeah, so it's a very exciting milestone for the company. It's also validation in a bit when you look at how the market has received it, and also it's probably one of the most successful IPOs in the industry. So in terms of how it's been valued, and to me, it's that's a point in time. So I think the more important message from the IPO is it really represents just the opportunity in the future for us. The reason, the valuations are where they are is because of the growth rates and of the potential of this business and also the service offerings. So the IPO also enables the financial aspects, right? So that as you, when you're looking at having 30 to 50% year-on-year growth rates, you need to fund that, and that helps generate capital to do it. So it's a big milestone for us, but it really kind of enables us to execute on our core business plan.
Okay, excellent. So I'd be remiss if I didn't dive into the whole India market a bit more. So because it is an exciting story. And you've talked about how it's developing already and the opportunities and how it's changed. So what are the challenges and opportunities as you see it within the domestic piece of it there?
Yeah, I think our main play in India, as far as our clients go, we've done a lot in the defense space in India, and also in the medical space as well. During COVID, we had a large medical company and client that we supported with making testing devices for COVID. So the market within India itself is actually very exciting. And just to give an idea of kind of what's happening now, I'm sure many of the viewers here are aware that companies like Apple are making phones in India for export, right? So this is something that 10 years ago would have been hard to get your head around, and now that's that's the model, and that's kind of indicative of what's happening. And to even we've even been approached by very large Chinese companies that want to partner so they can service their global clients as well and have an option in India. So I think the key message is it's not a India or China discussion or a Mexico discussion. It's really a continuation of having offerings in these different regions that address different needs of the clients. And yeah, there is I think China will probably lose maybe 2% of the overall pie as far as manufacturing, but I still think they have somewhere around 48% of it. So that's probably not going to change anytime soon. And so it's really interesting just to see that this is really kind of, I feel really at the early stages of what's going to run for the next couple decades within India. And when you look at the talent availability, the enabling political and governmental aspects of it, the investment, if you spend some time in India and you just see the level of investment that's happening, there's a lot that's really continuing to fuel this. So the question has come up many times leading up to the IPO as well. Is this just a reaction to COVID, and is this going to reset? And my point of view is, like I said, well, in 2005 is when I moved to China, and everything was going to China, and here we are, 2.5 decades later. Well, 1.5 decades later, and it's still not going anywhere. So will it settle out or not? But I think we're really at the beginning of a multi-decade type of scenario for what's happening in this market.
You referenced there the labor force availability, and you've mentioned the cost of it. So speak to that as far as finding skilled and unskilled. I mean, I remember years ago, everybody said, well, it was hard to get EMS employees because the competition from, whether a lot of the IT companies over there, right? There were better paid jobs, higher skilled jobs there. How is it for EMS workers?
Yeah, there is, and just to provide a little bit more detail, right? So when the comment on the cost is 1/3, production labor compared to China. Actually, the cost at the end of the production line is almost the same, right? So there's true labor costs, and then there's a cost of what it is at the end of the production line of the product, right? So If you were to make your widget in those two regions, it'd actually be pretty similar at the end of the production line. So that hasn't happened for quite some time, or ever. And so the fact now that the availability of labor, the growth, the growth potential there is quite significant. So as far as manufacturing labor and the cost standpoints, I think that's all a big advantage. There will continue to be, I believe there will continue to be a healthy competition for talent, senior level talent especially, right? And this is whether it's in the engineering services side of the business or even in the EMS side, getting good program managers, getting good supply chain leaders, etc. Those skills are coming up within India, but there's still a blend where you're going to look globally and then also within India. So I think this is an area that is that is really now starting to develop and grow within India. Mm-hmm. And that will continue to bring in a more comprehensive offering in region. And then you just look at what's just the amount of content that's being manufactured in India today will continue to rise, right? So you look at semiconductor coming in, you start to look at all the parts that go into a product, instead of it coming from other countries, being able to have it manufactured in India in more of a one geo will continue to bring some of those cost advantages and that service advantage.
Mm-hmm. The other big challenge obviously has been material supply chain for the last few years. How was that experience with India? How was it for Cyient?
So it's in our business, in low volume, high mix, in our sectors, air and defense, so we definitely had to work with the supply chain issues. It was definitely an impact on our business. We could have, we actually had great growth through the last few years. It probably could have been much higher growth though if the supply chains were, in better shape. So the good news is that is easing, improving, right? I think when we meet with our clients and CEOs, we kind of, one of the first questions we always kind of ask is, how are you seeing things? How are you seeing things? And so it's definitely a point of concern and something that I think is being much more actively managed today. So, but it's definitely easing, and I think it's not necessarily the big shortage, high risk type of headline making scenario that we've gone through. Now, of course, anything can happen, but right now that element of it seems to be less of a concern. Right now, it's more of a how do you build redundancy? How are you designing your supply chains? A lot of discussion is really around what is sustainable. So even though the inventory, even though supply chain stuff's improving, companies have gone in and bought more inventory, so they're carrying more inventory. So there's, that's not always the best answer either. So it's an ongoing, it's going to be an ongoing focus, and India's going to start to bring more of that to the table. So depends on the product. A lot of it will still come in from other countries, but a lot, more and more content is getting locally sourced, and a lot of our large clients are making this a high priority. Like, how much of our bill of material can we start to get alternates that are locally sourced?
And that's an interesting point. I remember interviewing, I think it's 2 years ago now, gentlemen, EMS and a supplier, I think it was Decky was the supplier. And it was about the incentives that the government was giving for manufacturing there. Part of that was hoping to grow that domestic supply base. So it sounds like that is taking root and bearing fruit now from your comments.
Definitely. So the governments, and this is no different than what other governments are doing globally, but there's definitely been investments from the governments in whether it's land or facilities or various schemes, depending on what sectors you're in. Those investments have been pretty robust, and that is continuing to help from an overall cost perspective. And that really is driving business and part of the growth. So that part's pretty, that part's pretty significant. I think, but I think as you look, as you look a bit longer term, though, there's continues to be opportunity in the product itself, where especially you can start to do we can start to leverage some of our design resources to make derivatives of a product that support the markets in India, where other countries have not, these products have only been available in other countries. So now you have a local market where derivative products can now go into. So that's kind of making the pie bigger for our clients. And then to the supply chain aspect, we also can leverage our design capabilities to help design in alternate components and alternate solutions there. So, I think one big thing that's shifting in EMS is that a lot of times the manufacturer is kind of responsible for just, buying, building, and shipping the product.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, we're investing heavily in supply chain. And when we say investing in supply chain, that means having talent in supply chain that can help problem solve for these types of solutions, right? So instead of saying, hey, this product's out of stock, customer, what do you want us to do? We will help, design in alternate components, work with the, supply chain, the companies to help provide those solutions. So really being a solution provider from an EMS perspective, I think is something that is really going to start to become really, I think, more table stakes to continue to do business in this industry. We can't, our clients need us to take more of that on.
Yeah. And it's interesting how we started on design and you brought it right back design at the end there too, and this like helping to redesign, right? So it's again using the strength of the company that you're heading now. So
yeah, and I think the issue, the thing with design is it's really more the impact design brings, right? If you look at how one of our clients spends money, if they run a product for 100 million in revenue of their own product, they might spend $2-3 million in the design of that product, and then they end up spending 95 million in the manufacturing. So that design piece, it's not so much like, oh, we got that 2-3 million in design work. That the reason why it's so important is, first of all, it helps us provide a turnkey solution to the client, so we can help them with the development of it. We design in our own supply chain, which we can now also do more globally and locally in India. But more importantly, we can design that bill of material at a lower cost point, and that allows us to really take more ownership throughout that process. Because traditionally, the OEM would come to the EMS, bill of material, it's already negotiated, and most EMS companies can't really do too much with that. So the whole discussion turns around, hey, what's your value-added margin? Mm-hmm. So this is this build to spec part of the business where you're really designing more of the product for the client is really having a bigger impact.
Mm. So you're obviously optimistic about the industry, EMS, kind of globally. What do you see as the big drivers then in the next few years? Is more outsourcing, more service? Is it cross-selling more services? What are the drivers for it?
So I think it continues to extend, right? EMS has been around for decades. I think the business started as overflow capacity, back in the day. Even in the early 2000s, a lot of focus on design and and logistics and getting more end to end. And I think what's really shifting now is that the larger clients are now finally starting to take more of that on. And I think when I say take more of that on, I mean with their partners. So the large OEMs have traditionally controlled most of the design and manufacturing aspect of it. And with what's happened over the last few years, it's become clear that, partnering more strategically across the core and non-core parts of their business, they're getting more comfortable with that. So the discussion is, I'll work with a partner on what's non-core, and I'll keep in-house what's core. But when you go down one level, what clients consider to be core is now shifting, right? So before it's like, oh, I have to do all this. There's no way I can trust someone to make this. Well, that part is now shifting as products have shorter, lifespans, need more iterations. Many companies have to make this amount of electronics in things is just literally gone up. So, even very large, some of our very large clients have, very limited budgets on what they can run in their business unit. And so they either run 5 products on their own, or they maybe run 8 products by, working with partners. And and that helps them get more of a footprint into the market. So that's kind of the shift that I continue to see with the business. But it's not gonna change overnight. It's just a progression, right? But it does move the needle on a deal by deal basis. So especially for a company of our size, and with the type of clients we have, we see where some of the dialogue we're having are on, co-develop of some of these systems, which are going to be a good part of, a good part of our revenue going forward, where, this is something that's been, I would say, pretty aspirational to be talking about 15 years ago.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And it also speaks to the maturation of the industry, that the OEMs are so much more trusting to be able to turn over more of their, their product and the full thing there. So,
right.
Tony, this has been excellent. You've been very generous with your time. I went over what I had allotted, but it was such a good conversation. So and you certainly have a passion for it and energy for it still. So, and that truly comes through. So, but thank you very much for your time, for giving us the overview. We'll certainly keep watching it and hopefully get more updates as this proceeds.
No, Eric, it's great. It's great to be here and part of EMSNOW. And yeah, this is definitely an exciting time for us. So, and we'll continue to stay part of the dialogue.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, continued success, and I look forward to catching up again in the future.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.